It's January 4th, 2026. My name is Christopher Pridham, and I was wanting to do this series on a book I'm writing called The Gods We Serve. And so I thought I would just do some short sort of messages or talk about it, maybe get some feedback. And what I mean by feedback, questioning, anything. Just to, as I develop really how I want to say this or do this. So the premise of The Gods We Serve is from the Ten Commandments, thou shalt have no other God before me, or no other gods before me, which is the first commandment. Now, when you deal with the first commandment, automatically to me it says, oh, like the first commandment's like one of the most important commandments. That you're to have no other gods before me. And yet, really, I would say the way I was raised, and through most of my conversations with other Christians, or even just your, what would I say? You're a Christian by default because they're American, okay? There's sort of an understanding there that there are no other gods. There's only one God. And, well, that's not actually what that verse says. So, so it's a matter of sort of exploring that, like, what does that mean? Also, this kind of ties into Paul when he's writing to both the Colossians and the Ephesians. And he deals with the idea that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of the air. And he goes in to describe them as thrones, as dominions, as rulers, as authority, cosmic powers over this present darkness, spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. Okay, so we have summarized all of this in a basic Christian vernacular as there is God and there's the devil. And that's the battle. Although that is not the battle, that's obviously not the main themes when you deal with the scriptures and what it sort of talks about. But that's how we've summarized it because, well, in general, as people, we're lazy. We don't really want to study. We don't want to know history. We don't want to know, the meaning of words. Life's busy. Do we have time to figure all that stuff out? And a lot of times, no, we don't. But that's been my sort of life's dedication over the past, this would be, since I was 16, is when I really started, intensely studying, and I'm now 60. So it's been, 45 years? So that's, a bit. That's a while. So that's why I'm, there's sort of a responsibility that this is what you've been working on. This is what you have to share. All right. So, and why I do it for very practical reasons. I consider myself a fairly practical person. What do I mean by that? I mean, there's a lot of things you can believe that's like, who really cares? Does it actually affect your daily life? Well, if it doesn't affect your daily life, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm really more interested in, like, how can I live a more successful life? And by success, I mean a life that has real meaning, that you feel, wow, that was a worthy life. That was good. And I was able to, in a sense, move with purpose, as it were, and that it has meaning, that there's truth in it, that you experience love, you experience the joy, you experience sort of the things of God. Does that mean the removal of problems? No. I mean, of course it doesn't mean the removal of problems in the sense of you will have problems. It doesn't mean that you can't fix them, but that's just part of life. Excuse me, I had this cough. But, that's part of life. It's problems are not a problem, as I would say. Um, that's what you're made to deal with. That's the idea of a life in Christ is equipped to deal with the problem. Again, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers. So you're not exempt from issues you're having to deal with. And really, that goes back to the whole commission of mankind, which is there's the talk of being given dominion. Really, back in Genesis, you deal with the whole idea, and this is in Genesis 1:26 through 28, where it's let us make man in our own image, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every creeping thing. And this idea of dominion, well, it has the meaning, and for me, when you break down the meaning of things, it's really fun to take the particular Hebrew word and break every letter down. And I kind of learned this through a particular rabbi. His name is Benjamin Bleck. Love the way he does Hebrew words and breaks them down by letter. And if you're unfamiliar, each letter has this much deeper meaning. And so what you're looking at with a Hebrew word, it's each letter, the concept within the letter, and then the formation of the word is the formation of these different concepts all together as the word. So every word is so deep and rich. That's why it's very difficult, in a sense, to translate something like the Old Testament or the Torah, because the words are quite rich, and they don't just equate to one English word. That's it. It's cheapening it in reality. I mean, we have to do what we do, but the word is really, it has such depth. So this particular word, which is the Hebrew word radah, okay? And it starts with the Hebrew letter resh. And the resh is the picture of a head, and it means leadership, priority, one who is in charge. Okay, so it starts with resh, and then it goes to dalet, the letter dalet. And the dalet is a door. So here you have the picture of the head, you have a door. The door, again, was the place of entry, the decision. You'll see the door mentioned a lot of times in Scripture. So in Egypt, they're placing the blood on the doorposts. In the New Testament, you have Jesus, talking about being the door. So the door is always a place of movement in, sort of a decision place of going into a place of protection, going into a certain domain. That was the door. All right. And then it goes to the Hebrew word hey, H-E-H. And this is the picture of a window, meaning the whole revelation, that which comes in, the light coming in. All right, so you have the head, you have the door, and you have the window. That's what forms this particular word, dominion. And you can see how it sets, you've built a house, in a sense. You've had a decision to form a house with a particular doorway, which, again, that doesn't mean it lets anything in. But there's also a window to let the light and the revelation in. Okay, this is dominion. This is my domain. This is my place. So when it says there to have dominion, it deals with these concepts. And before that, it's not simply dominion. And you'll see that it starts with the idea of the command for man to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. All right, this is all part of what's going on. To be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Because dominion isn't simply, man's commission is just to have a dominion, a domain. Not exactly. It's be fruitful, and fruitfulness, all right, the whole idea here. Let me see. I've got this word. Okay. So be fruitful, which is the word P-R-U. And this word is 3 letters, Pe, Resh, He, or the mouth, head, and behold. And this is about expression. Fruitfulness begins with what you bring forth into the world, okay? So speech, I mean, the whole concept of logos, speech, bringing something into the world. You see, a thought is a thought, it stays in the head, and it isn't born until it's actually spoken. You have to say it, all right? So first you have mouth, you have expression. You have the head, you have leadership, all right? The ordering of the mind. It's not just impulse. You're not just saying it through impulse. It doesn't bypass the mind. It's going through the mind. So there is headship, leadership. And finally, behold, there's revelation, okay? So here, very, very similar to dominion, but this one starts, instead of a doorway, it's starting with a mouth, okay? But the other 2 letters being the same, the head and the he. So, well, the other one had, what was it? Resh, the head principle. It's a resh, head principle. This one is resh, again, head, and the he. So there's 2 letters that are the same, but it has the mouth that it starts with. And so you're dealing with the ability to speak. So fruitfulness, but it's not just not purely the concept of speech, it's the concept of bringing something forth, all right? So that's why fruitfulness was often interpreted as children, and it's not that children are, that's a form of fruitfulness. It's not the only form of fruitfulness. It's, you have to be productive. You have to bring something forth. So man was to be fruitful. They needed to bring things forth and multiply. Now the word multiply here is the resh, bet, he. All right, so resh being, again, the head principle, growth, bet, house, container. Okay, multiplying requires a vessel. So there's a headship, there's a vessel, and then there's revelation. Hey, the increase is evident and established. So the direct increase is made evident. So again, the principal direction grows with aim. The house is the container which holds it. And then there's revelation. This is the idea of increase. Increase is not simply to, just to make more. It's how and what you're making more. It's based in revelation. It's based in a container, and it's based with actual direction that you have. So to be fruitful and multiply was the really the whole concept here. Is one of to bring forth with direction into the visible manifestation, and then that directed increase, house contained, made evident. So what you're doing is made evident. To do it and make it evident. That's be fruitful and multiply. And then you fill the earth and subdue it. And the idea here is that to fill was Vav, Mem, Lamed, Alf, Vav. That's the letters used in to fill. And it's the hook, the water, the flow, learning and teaching, master, teacher, wondrous alignment, the connector. Okay, so there's 2 Vavs here, 2 connectors. And so fill isn't just to occupy space. It connects, it lets life flow and spread. It gives order, teachability, keep it aligned to the master and extend it outward. That's the idea, to fill. And then you have the earth and subdue it. And subdue it has the letters Vav, Kav, Bet, Shin, He, which is connect, palm, house or a habitat, the tooth, which is the changing and transformation, and then behold, to reveal what's been done in the open, make it answerable, visible, not predatory. So the synthesis here is to subdue means to become connected responsibility that bends power into purpose, to build a workable home or order through transformative forces, carried in revealed accountability. And really, the whole meaning here is that you create with purpose, you build order and community, you suffuse with meaning, and you have responsible mastery. Only then do you engage the power to shape order and refine creation. So there's a whole order to things. So the idea of subdue and have dominion, it involves all of these things. It involves a bringing things into order. So that's really what you're dealing with. To have dominion is bring things into order. So even in the created world, you have the idea of everything begins in a chaotic state. One of the things I talk about in the book is that God is chaos. Now, for us, we consider chaos to be a negative thing. Chaos is not a negative thing. It is non-ordered in a time and space way. All right, what do I mean by that? Well, in God, in the eternal realm, there is no up or down, left or right. There is no separation. So there is no sense of order because there is no need. There is no separation. So there is no order to anything. Everything is one. So in the eternal, everything is one. It's when it's infused into time and space that order becomes necessary. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, again, in the eternal, it just is. It doesn't move. There is no movement in the eternal. It just isness, because there's nothing to move to. That's a concept of time and space. And that's where we dwell. We dwell in time and space. So because we live in time and space, you need an order to divine life, as it were, or to life, as it were. And so this is what man has been commissioned to do, is to present God as he is, but in time and space. Therefore, you must present God in an ordered form. If that makes sense. Well, it might not make sense right now, but it eventually will. That's the whole purpose of the book, is kind of to get to that point. The idea was that Jesus was the perfect ordered form of God. So he did only the Father's will. He did nothing of his own will. Everything was in perfect order. That's the idea of perfection. Perfection is the idea of the perfect order of things. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's an order to things. So I'm involved in construction. So when you do construction, you have to do it to an order. You can't just like, okay, we're going to build a house. Well, the painters are coming out now. Well, we don't have walls. We don't have the exterior. Like, we're not ready for the painters. Well, but you're building a house. We want to do our thing now. No, that's not the proper order. You can't do it then. All right. So we need to clear the ground. We need to do the groundwork. We need to lay the foundation. Then we have to build a framing. So there's a whole order to the way this is done. And it's not where one thing is better than the other or one thing is improper. It's that it's improper when it's done out of order, but it's not just innately improper. And I think this is where a lot of people get the idea of sin and the idea of these different things misunderstood. It's simply because things are, a lot of times, they're just done out of order. And in that way, it's sin, which, again, coming from the concept where sin, the word, means simply to miss the mark. You didn't hit the target, all right? It doesn't mean that the arrow, in a sense, is bad. It means that it didn't hit where it needed to hit, or it was, like we would say, it was mistimed, okay? It was out of order. So when Paul talks about the wrestling with principalities and powers, all right, so what are we trying to get into order? And when God says, um, thou shalt have no other God before me, what is he talking about? Well, there really is two forms of what we call God. Or in the Old Testament, it's the Elohim. Or there's actually a plurality called the Elohims. That's what it is. It's actually a plurality. It's like the powers, all right? Well, in the created world, the created world is the world of time and space, all right? So you have God, the eternal, and then you have God in time and space, which is everything, okay? So God in time and space, in one sense, separated himself. That's really not necessarily the greatest way to put it. I'll have to think of like how to do that. It's like he has the power of light, and he gives that to the sun and the stars, and he has the power of darkness, and he gives that into space, and he has the power of whatever it may be, action, movement. He has the power of movement. Well, in the way I would look at it, he would give that to Mars. Okay, that represents the power of movement. So there are those that hold these different powers, as it were. There are the principalities and powers. They hold the powers. So the power of beauty is held by a particular sort of entity, as it were. All right. And these are the things that influence us. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. And in the book, I go into a lot of detail on what these sort of archons are, where we eventually get the word archetype, which is archetypal energies that move in a pattern, okay? So in that way, he's given these powers over. And it is our role to bring them into a harmony expressed on earth. That's why the prayer, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, the heavens are all in their gravitational flow and movement. They're all in order. So they flow in order. Do we know where all the planets are going to be a year from now? Well, we actually do, because they're following an order. So what the desire is that order be manifest on earth, that same kind of order, that we move in a conscious way to God's power movement, all right, to how he is moving, how he is made to flow, as it were, and to manifest and express. The one we know who did that, who was able to bring these into a harmony, was Jesus. That's the whole concept of Jesus, is that he became the Son, which the Son is that one who is mature, who has reached a state of maturity. And we see this reached, and then it recognized at baptism, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. This wasn't recognized at birth. He wasn't born the Son of God, all right? He became the Son of God. He was born with the intention of being the Son, but I would contend that he was not born a son. And that gets into the whole Roman adoption and what that means and how that was to be understood. And again, that goes into mass detail in the book. But so you have the idea of God in time and space, and we have what's called the angels, and we have the princes, and you'll see this mentioned in the scriptures about the different angels, messengers, and what they do. But bringing that to a place of, okay, what does this mean for me? Again, you'll have a thought. Do you really think that thought is you? Or is that something, a message that's been placed inside of you? So again, angel just means messenger. Did they deliver a message? And we call that message a thought. Okay. Now, what do you do with the thought? How many thoughts do you have that you do nothing with? They just pass on by. a lot, right? So, but there are certain thoughts that give birth to something. They give birth to action. And this is where you get into the concept of, let them have dominion, that you need to bring these things into order. We don't act on every thought. We don't act on every impulse. We have to recognize, is this impulse coming from God? Now, these other things, these powers, they are called the Elohim. They're called God. But they're not God in the way we would talk about the Father. Okay, or God. So there is and that's where we get the term the God of gods, the Lord of lords, and the King of kings. There is there is the God, which is the creator of the gods. All right. So, and this is why polytheism and monotheism got so confused, even in our day today. The ancient world understood the gods. They understood the individual aspect of God. They did not understand the eternal aspect of God, or the monotheistic God, that there was a God of gods. And this was massively confusing to the children of Israel. And we see that at the base of Mount Sinai. They were wanting to put their God among the gods, that their God was the most powerful of the gods. And God was there saying, no, I am not the most powerful of the gods. I am the creator of the gods. Well, that was at the time beyond their concept. They struggled with that for forever. And now today we sort of struggle with the reverse. We don't understand that there is something to the polytheism. There is something to the gods. We just think, no, there's only one. It's like, no, there are other gods, and you can serve them above God. I would suggest that a lot of people calling themselves Christians are serving these other gods and confusing them with God. Definitely Venus. Venus is oftentimes, it's a god of love, what we would call love. There really is no power of love that is beyond the eternal God. There isn't an individual God created that is love. No, that is the feeling and expression of love is an eternal one. It's non-divided. So when you feel love, actual love, that is not a polytheistic God domain. Anger, that's a polytheistic God domain. Force, polytheistic God domain, not the domain of the eternal. God is love. The eternal God is love. The non-divided God is love, because love is a non-divided thing. Lust, again, that's something different. Affection, something different. So these are some of the things that I explore in the book. Again, in a lot more detail, a lot more backing, a lot of scripture, a lot of historical text I go into. But I just wanted to sort of present this short half-hour talk or whatever, just as a beginning of maybe going into more of the depth of the idea of how do we find and bring these things into order? How do we take these different energies or dynamics and bring them into an order and submit them like Jesus did? All right, any questions, feel free to ask. Enjoy your day.